So it's very easy to start a Facebook or Twitter, and you do that too. But fundamentally, you're almost like a digital sharecropper. You don't own the land that you're cultivating and growing things on. And so you know, if you get serious about it, and if you like it, and if you think it's something that you might want to be around for a while or have a big impact on the world, it's great to have your own domain. And so that's as easy as like you can go to WordPress.com, plunk down, I don't know what the latest price is, 30 or 50 bucks for you get a domain, you get a website, you get like all this sort of stuff. And that truly belongs to you, and no one can take it away from you. Even the code itself, it's kind of like you both have the car and the blueprint for how to build one, and you have the ability to modify anything in it. And so the whole thing belongs to you, and that ownership, I think, is really, really important for free society, right? Like that's one of the things I think free societies are built on, is this idea of property rights and private ownership and things like that. So like you should have that online as well.
Welcome to the Lone Star Play Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. Join me and a famous guest every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We discuss their career, life, food, Texas, and everything in between. Let's get started. All right, how are we doing, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Lone Star Plate. Yes, I'm Patrick, your host. I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. Okay, so got a great episode today. I had a great conversation with Matt Mullenweg. I hope I'm saying them right. I know I am. He's from Houston, and he is the owner of and founder of WordPress. Owns it, doesn't own it really now. It's a free, you can't really own it. This is the whole problem with this stuff that I don't understand, tech and source and coding. And that's why we get into this. So Matt Mullenweg, who, created WordPress and this sort of free open source coding thing that, look, I forget exactly the percentage in the episode that we talk about, but it's absolutely astronomical how much of something he created is being used on the internet. I'm talking the internet, okay? Global internet, the whole world. Okay, 25%, 30%, something crazy like that. A third of the internet is using something he created. That's nuts. Okay, that is nuts. And so I got a chance to talk to Matt. He's down in Houston, running his business and everything he's got going. And, we talk about that again. This is why we bring these people on, so we can get into these conversations. I don't really know much about coding, but he definitely breaks down some stuff for us, and we can learn a little bit about it. A really cool guy. Just down to earth, and he was so patient with me of, asking. It says like, I'm talking to a genius, okay? And it was like, right? I mean, just a peanut trying to have a conversation with an elephant. That's not the right, that doesn't make sense. See, I can't even put together the right analogy or metaphor. So I don't even know which one it is. I'm digging a hole here, guys. So let's just enjoy the show. Okay. Matt Mullenweg from Houston, WordPress. We all know WordPress. You've probably, some people have probably, put some holes in some walls. You kick some doors. You've thrown a computer across the room. Or you've, whatever, it can be frustrating, right? Doing this stuff, doing websites and stuff. So, he was just an amazing guy, and it was just a really cool conversation. So you guys are really going to enjoy it. So just check it out. WordPress, Matt Mullenweg. And, okay, before we get to the episode, don't forget, check us out on social media, Texas Real Food, right? Follow us, like us. You can see the other posts. And there's also lots of other stuff from Texas Real Food that you can find. So not just the podcast, recipes and videos about food and stuff. And we talk about food too with Matt, which was really cool. But we talk food with everybody, right? We try to. And don't forget, go to YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, click the subscribe down there and, get the notifications. Because again, we release episodes all week long. We release content all week long. Every day, all day, we are releasing content. So you can find all kinds of great stuff and keep you in the loop, right? So thank you so much, as always, for listening. We here at the team just really appreciate you guys keeping us in business and keeping us going. We're putting more effort into the podcast and doing more things. You're going to see more from us, and we're getting bigger and badder guests, and it's just getting better and better, guys. So without y'all support, that honestly wouldn't be happening. So really do appreciate it. It starts with you guys, and I don't want to say it ends with you guys, right? That sounds dark. So it continues with you guys, right? See, found the words. All right. So, okay. Thank you so much. Let's check out the episode. Enjoy it. Matt Mullenweg, WordPress. Boom. But again, thank you so much, Matt. I really do appreciate you taking the time, man. I was really looking forward to this conversation. Now, look, you're going to have to forgive me. I'm naive, ignorant when it comes to technology. In some ways, I'm a chef. I come from cooking. I like things I can hold in my hand, and technology and stuff. I'm sure you hear that from a lot of people. It seems like something so foreign in a lot of ways. So yeah. Just I'm real curious. First, I guess I'm just going to start with why. Have you always been into like technology and that sort of thing growing up?
Yeah, I probably got it from my father. So my dad, growing up in Houston, he worked for mostly oil companies, Brown and Root, et cetera, Halliburton.
Yeah.
And
Oh
he
wow.
got an early computer science degree from University of Houston in the 70s. And so they were always, he's a tinkerer. He would fix our cars, he would build stuff with wood. Before I was born, he would build surfboards and stuff. And so at some point he started building computers and programs. And so that was always around. Every son wants to be like their father, or at least I did.
Yeah.
And so whatever he would do, I would just kind of follow. He's the reason I played the saxophone when he'd
Oh
mow the
wow.
lawn behind him with like a little toy mower.
Yeah, I did that too. That's funny. So your father definitely the one that sort of got you interested into creating, right? Just sort of creating these things out of new technology. But you've sort of taken it a step further, which is the coding part, and that's something a little different to me because you've got like the physical, like you said, your dad physically took apart computers and stuff, but then you've got right, the language, the inside of it. Did your father ever play around with that stuff too that led you to that, or?
Yeah, that was kind of his day job, was programming. So yeah, when you move from atoms to bits, right, from the physical world to the digital world, it's so empowering because you can have very fast feedback loop, right? You feels like you're building something with your hands. You write some lines, you see if it works, if it doesn't, if it compiles or not, and then the big thrill for me was having my code used by other people. So the
Yeah.
first time, before WordPress, I contributed to what's called an open source project, which is kind of like a program that people collaborate all over the world on, kind of like WordPress is itself. And I submitted code to be included in this software, and it was accepted. And so it was like one that was so cool because like the code I wrote as being a 18, 19-year-old kid in Houston was good enough to reach this worldwide thing. And then it was there, and then thousands of people were running it on their websites, and that was like just a huge rush for me. And that is definitely how I caught the bug for creating web software.
Yeah, that's so you like seeing someone implement the work that you took the time to figure out, right? Whatever it was. I mean,
Yeah.
that's cool.
In particular, my passion is creating canvas, right? So WordPress is like a canvas, a paintbrush. Like what you paint with it is very different from what other people are going to paint with it.
Yeah.
But when you are able to create that environment for people to express so much creativity, I get a huge charge out of that. It's like making an instrument and then seeing Jimi Hendrix play it or something like that. There's just a huge, yeah, it just feels very fulfilling. And so I feel like that's my place in the world, is to create the things that help other people create things.
That's awesome. No, I mean, look, it's, I actually got the statistics a little wrong. I was looking up, how much WordPress has. and I don't even really even know what the statistic means, to be honest with you, but it's like, I had read like 28% of the internet, like it is a part of 28% of the internet. But then I was messaging back with some of your people, and they're like, no, it's actually even more than that. It's like 38%. I was like, holy shit, it's even more than that. I mean, what does that even mean, really, exactly? When it says 38 or 40, like, what does that mean to someone like me? Like, I'm assuming, 40% of the parking lot is taken up by WordPress, right? That's what I think in my mind.
Yeah, I guess a good way to think of it is like if you're making a website, you can use anything, right? And about 38% of people have chosen to use WordPress. And I see that as a trailing indicator of how well we're doing serving users. Are we listening to what people want? Are we adapting? WordPress is 17 years old. A lot has
Yeah.
changed in that time, including like the invention of the iPhone. So like you have to change. If you don't evolve, you just become completely irrelevant. And so it's like surfing a wave. We need to make sure that we're always adapting and always updating to what you want and what the teenagers want or what your kids are going to want and things like
Sure.
that.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I think it's I think it's amazing. I mean, WordPress. It's like everybody knows WordPress. It's like this. It's
Not
almost.
yet. So
I
we're
mean,
working on that.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, in your world, I love it from your perspective. That's what's cool about this is that, like, from your perspective, it's a totally different thing, right? From my perspective, I think WordPress. Everybody knows WordPress here. Like, that's like, to me, that's like Google. Honestly, in my mind, I think WordPress, Google, it's just like the same sort of thing. As so many people use it, and so many people get angry about it. That's how you know you have a good product, I think. That so many people get upset about it, because they use it, right? And they're frustrated by it. But I love that your approach is, look, we want to make this for you to make it, right? This is a tool for you to use, not for me to say, this is where you go. And I love that. And I think maybe some people don't like that for some weird reason.
Well, or they might just be frustrated with the software. Like it's not perfect by any degree.
Sure.
I'm probably the unhappiest WordPress user in the world. Like I see all the flaws, all the seams, all the things wrong with it.
That's
So,
so funny.
we just try to make it a little bit better every day. And that's really kind of our philosophy is just we work really hard at it.
Yeah.
Literally every day of the week, pretty much is someone committing code to WordPress or working on WordPress. And you do that long enough, it just starts to get better and better and suck a little less every day. And if we're able to keep that up, I think that hopefully the people who don't like it today might give it another chance a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Like we're going to be around. So like if you don't like it today, that's totally fine. Maybe we haven't figured out how to make it accessible or tailored to your use case or something like that. But I encourage people who maybe have checked it out before and didn't like it, check it out again. It's so much better than it even was like 3 months ago that it is worth giving it another chance just periodically.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Come back to it, that things have updated or changed, like you said. Yeah, that makes total
Today,
sense.
WordPress is it is kind of like a power tool, like an SLR camera or learning to drive is maybe a good analogy. Like, when you first got in the car, you kind of had to learn like how to shift and which pedal is which and things like that. But once you got over that initial learning curve, the world was your oyster, right? It opens up so much freedom, so much optionality for you, especially being in Texas. Like, you remember when you get your learner's permit or your license, like, it's like, everything changes.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly right.
So it's the same when you use WordPress. Like, all of a sudden, you'll see websites not as something you consume, but you can look at any website and be like, oh, I think I can figure out how to do that. You start to see how they're put together and the blocks, the building blocks of them. And the entire web becomes like a set of Legos. You can kind of figure out like, oh, here's how they did that. Here's how I can do that.
Oh, wow, man, that's really cool. I like the way you put that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that's what people are trying to do, right? When they get online, they're trying to, well, at least when they create a website, they want to create something that's different and stands out, and at the same time learn something. Yeah, because most people don't know how to design a website, and that's probably where maybe some of these ideas came from, because you didn't know how to code, and people don't know how to do all this stuff. They get scared by, you hear HTML, or I don't even know if that's the coding that's used now.
Yeah, it's still around.
It's still around. Okay, good. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm curious why develop WordPress, and then on top of that, why make it free and open source? That sounds crazy if you're trying to make money.
hmm Those are two interesting questions. I guess one, I had started blogging and seen how great it was. It's not new by any regards, like, the founding fathers would make pamphlets and print them out and pass them out and stuff, think of that like physical blogging. Um, so there's always this, I think the written word is just an incredible way to communicate ideas, to clarify your own thinking. When you write things down, it makes you think about it in a different way. Um, it's easy to consume, it's easy to translate. Like there's just something very connecting and core to, I think, the evolution of humanity about the written word. And so the practice of when I started blogging more regularly was incredibly rewarding, not just for the writing itself, but also for the audience that found it. So, I didn't have a big audience, but the people who were there cared about the same things I cared about. And so you start to get these comments or make connections for people who are reading your stuff. And that's really valuable, and it's kind of amazing. Like, it doesn't matter if you get thousands of views, you just get like the couple of people who you care about reading it, even if it's just your friends. Like, that's pretty exciting and pretty rewarding.
Yeah.
So we want to make those tools available to everyone. What we say our mission is to democratize publishing. And to us, what that means is that everyone has the means of productions accessible to them. You or I can use the exact same tools to publish that like Time Magazine does, or the New York Post or something like that. They're all
Wow.
using WordPress. So to be able to have the same printing press, the same access to these tools is pretty powerful. And then you're on the internet, so you're one click away from billions of people.
Yeah.
And it is, you hear about things going viral or really picking up. Like, there's so many examples of when people have created something that really resonates with a wider audience. Sometimes it can get really huge and they get book deals or like other things. I don't think that's the reason to do it, right? Because like it's like saying I want to play music to like be Taylor Swift or something.
Yeah.
Like, that'll happen to some people, but you should play music because music will make your life better and you'll bring joy to other people. Like, even if you never get a record deal or something, it still is going to change your life in a really positive way.
Yeah. Well, we hope that people think that way, right? That's why we appreciate someone who's very endearing, right, and genuine, right? Because
Yeah.
there's no secret, right? There's no fake mission or this faux, thing about it. It just seems very real. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, it seems. First of all, I love that. I feel like you haven't been like corrupted by the big people running the world, right? There's this conspiracy, right? That there's this
The Illuminati.
yeah, the
Yeah. I go
Illuminati
to
or
the
something
meetings, but
crazy.
they're not that
Yeah.
interesting.
I love that. I mean, it's just like, first of all, that's just crazy to think about. But yeah, it's great to know that you still have this mindset of you just want people to have access to this, right? So that it's almost levels the playing field. Is that sort of what you were going for?
Yeah, I think that right now there's a lot of on-ramps to the internet, right? But they're typically um, what we'll call like walled gardens or closed systems. So it's very easy to start a Facebook or Twitter. You do that too. But fundamentally, you're um, almost like a digital sharecropper. You don't own the land that you're cultivating and growing things on. And so you know, if you get serious about it and if you like it and if you think it's something that you might want to be around for a while or have a big impact on the world, it's great to have your own domain. And so that's as easy as like you can go to WordPress.com, plunk down, I don't know what the latest price is, 30 or 50 bucks for you get a domain, you get a website, you get like all this sort of stuff. And that truly belongs to you. Like, no one can take it away from you. Um, Even the code itself, it's kind of like you both have the car and the blueprint for how to build one, and you have the ability to modify anything in it. And so the whole thing belongs to you, and that ownership, I think, is really, really important for free society, right? Like, that's one of the things I think free societies are built on, is this idea of property rights and private ownership and things like that. So like, you should have that on online as well.
Dude, that's so awesome. No, we need people like you, man, they essentially have our back as consumers in this digital world, because the digital world is very confusing to a lot of people. Yeah, right. I mean, I'm sure even to yourself to some extent.
Yeah.
You know, and for someone that just doesn't really, it's not part of their daily life or something, it's good to have people that are taking care of these things without you even knowing. Like, I wouldn't even know that we would need something like that, right? Like, that wouldn't even I just wouldn't even know. But thankfully that you're, putting a platform out there or a service out there like this that, people can have access to. And again, I think it just levels the playing field. And I think that's an important thing in technology. Like you said, I love that quote you said about you're cultivating the land you don't even own, right? Like that's
Mhm.
such a powerful statement when it comes to digital media and our footprint, our personal footprints online, and getting ownership, getting control or power of that. Like you said, you get a domain, you get a thing, it's yours. You
Yeah.
own it. You don't. It's nobody else's.
If the platforms change, I mean, there was a time on the internet when AOL seemed like the dominant thing and would be around forever. And
Yeah, that's
obviously it's
true.
not. But
That's true.
that's,
That's so
if you had
close.
asked people in the 90s, they would have been like, yeah,
Yeah,
three
totally.
years from now, AOL will be around.
That guy
But it
that's
didn't
got
really,
the AOL tattoo, he's just like, damn
right?
it. Why did I do that?
Totally. And the good news is it's not just me doing this. Like, so one of the cool things about WordPress is it's a group of volunteers from all over the world. Our last release had, I think, over 600 people that contributed to it. And so there's people, and the reason why a lot of us work on it is not just to have WordPress be more popular. It's for that freedom. We want to increase the freedom in the world. And the best way to do that is make the easiest to use, most powerful everything software. But it's a means to an end of increasing freedom on the internet.
So, what does that mean exactly when you say you're working with people all over the world contributing to WordPress? What does that mean exactly? Just to let the
Yeah.
layman, the average Joe.
Maybe a good analogy is, how the Wikipedia works?
Yeah,
Where there's like anyone can go in and submit an edit, and other people might tweak
I
that or
see.
revert it or
Yeah,
improve it. Open source is the same idea, but for software. So, all the code behind WordPress is totally open. You can see every line of it. And people go in and submit improvements. And there's like
that's
editors,
crazy.
what we call project leaders,
Wow.
that'll accept them, deny them, tweak them, you know. And so when the new features get developed, that's kind of how they work. It's we have meetings online. It's people all over the world, often in different countries, that English might not be their first language. So we just kind of meet online and coordinate everything through like online chat and stuff.
Wait, so these people, they don't even work for WordPress? They're just like me, just like a random person who's like, oh, I think this, code for WordPress. Boom, boom. That's
Yeah.
really.
Yeah,
What?
so I have a for-profit company called Automatic, which
Yeah.
is like where my job. That's what I'm the CEO of. And of the 600 people in the last release, maybe 10% of them were from Automatic employees.
Really?
But yeah, that other 90% is just people all over the world. Sometimes they work for different companies like the New York Times or GoDaddy. Sometimes they're just passionate
Oh.
volunteers or users. Sometimes they're people learning to code. So it's actually pretty amazing if you think, if you were learning to code and you went and said, "Hey, Facebook, can I work on your homepage?" To be like, "What?" But you can come to
Totally.
WordPress and say, "Hey, can I change this thing?" And some of the best developers in the world will say, "Here's how you can make that better," or "Here's why that's not a good idea." So it's actually a fantastic way. Contributing to open source is a great way to learn. When I used to do music, they always said you don't want to be the worst person in the band because then you'd be learning the most from all the other band members. So particularly if you're, I know a lot of people are changing careers right now or looking for different types of work.
Yeah.
Learning WordPress is an amazing way to have a business because WordPress has actually been going up because so many more people are moving online in the pandemic. And a great way to learn it is by contributing. You're able to kind of like join the band
Yeah.
and play around, and you'll get feedback and if you want even mentorship, you can always ask people like, "Hey, what do you think about this code? How is it going? Like, what can I improve?"
God, I had no idea all of this existed. I guess I just didn't know what that meant. Like, I hear, right, I'm looking at open source, free and open
Mm-hmm.
source. And I think, first of all, I think of like movies, right? There's always this movie where some guy, I wish I had a good example of a movie, right? Some
Mm-hmm.
guy's like, you got a flash drive, right? It's some sort of like flash drive or something. And it's like, look, this, some company wants to whatever keep it for themselves, and this people are fighting to give it to the world, right? Is that
Uh-huh.
essentially what you have done exactly? Is that what open source means? It's just
Yeah,
anybody has access to it. It's
everyone has
free.
access to it. It's kind of like a cross between the Wikipedia and maybe like an Amish barn raising, where the whole community comes together and
Yeah.
builds something. Um, So
That
that's
is,
probably like
it's
a good
crazy.
analogy. And the
Yeah.
cool thing is it's not just WordPress. So there's actually at this point probably millions of open source projects. And you're using some every day, even if you don't know it. So built into your iPhone, built into your computer, built into your car, there's open source libraries or bits of code that people created for others to reuse. And engineers, programmers don't like doing the same thing over and over again. So often, instead of reinventing the wheel, we're just like, hey, we call it a library that you can reuse over and over again. And yeah, if you go to a site like GitHub, you'll see that that's just a repository of millions and millions of open source projects and tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people working together to do it. So I think it's cool, especially if you think
It's
of like what's
awesome.
going to accelerate the evolution of humanity. It's going to be more communication and collaboration, right? If and that's also why something like a WordPress can get 38% of market share, which is more than 10 times the number two in the market. Because what happened is all the people who were building other blogging systems or other CMSs, that stands for content management systems, basically a way to publish a website. They said, well, we can have 20 not that good ones, or we can work together and build one amazing one, you know? And so let's just do that because it's
Yeah.
digital. It's an econ. We call it an economics of abundance versus the economics of scarcity. Like in the physical world, if you have the milkshake, I don't have the milkshake, right? Like there's only one,
Yeah.
um, or property or anything like that. Like it's kind of zero sum. But in the digital world, like we can have infinite copies for basically no incremental cost. And you having 100 copies doesn't make my copies any less valuable. And in fact, you get the opposite. You get what's called the network effect, where the more copies there are of something, the more people using it, the more valuable it becomes. So one of the reasons there's a positive flywheel is like the more people that use WordPress, the more valuable it is to learn WordPress,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're a journalist and you write for the New York Post, and then you get hired by TechCrunch or the New York Times or something else, they're also using WordPress. So you don't have to relearn a new thing. You're
It's
just like,
awesome.
oh, yeah, I'm now using this same
Yeah.
software on a different domain.
Yeah.
And so there's these network effects that make it more valuable.
God, that's amazing. Like, why? I love that. I mean, 38%. That's such a that's like, I mean, that's crazy to think about. I'm sure that blows your mind too, right? That's almost half of the internet, right? So that's like half. Am I saying that right? Half of the internet, almost half the internet is
More than a
using
third is
WordPress,
what we say.
right?
Yeah.
More than a third. Okay, I like almost half just because that sounds like fucking crazy. But almost a third sounds loco as well. I mean, that's nuts, right? The entire internet. We're talking. That's crazy. That's something you created in Houston, right? Just like on a whim, and so you could have essentially made the choice to. Uh, I don't know, sell it or whatever, like not make it free and open source, right? What do they call that? Closed source? I don't know. Is that the right term?
We
What's the
should
term?
we should call it proprietary, right?
Proprietary. Okay. I mean,
And
yeah,
that's how
makes
all
sense.
software is by default. Most
Yeah.
things are probably proprietary that you use. But honestly, if WordPress had been proprietary, I don't think it would be this popular. Like,
Interesting.
so one of the reasons it's been
Interesting.
popular is because it's free and open source. So
Yeah.
people can adapt it, they can use it. If you're building a business on the web, for example, it's um, it's way safer to actually build it on open source than a proprietary system, right? Because the proprietary company might change their mind. There's this cool site, I think it's called the Google Graveyard or something, and it's all the products that Google has shut down. You
Oh,
know,
Google's horrible about that. I don't
Google
ever sign
Wave,
up for
Google
Google
Reader,
anything.
Google
Yeah, I don't sign up for anything Google because I'm like, well, they're gonna get rid of it in 6 months. Why even start to learn how to use it?
Duo. Yeah, they shut so many things down, and they're one of the most they're trillion and a half dollar company, and they shut things down. So, but when it's open source, it can't shut it down. If I quit WordPress, and I was gone, other people just pick it up and continue it. As long as there's an incentive in the world for anyone to use it, like anyone can develop it. It doesn't require me or Automatic or anyone else.
That's so awesome, man. Just can't tell you how cool that is. I just think that's so. You know what it is? It's rock and roll. That's what it is. It's rock and roll in the tech world. That's what it is. I
Yeah, if
love it.
anyone listening to this is interested in technology or wants to go in technology or wants their kids to go into technology, I would say open source is the future. So check it out, get involved with different projects. Other than WordPress, there's really one for everything. So like some of the best audio editing software and video 3D mapping software, and you can fly drones. You can, there's so much cool stuff you can do with open source. Just get involved. And
Wow.
what's neat is you start to look at the world in a different way. Remember I said you can start to look at the web like a set of Lego blocks, like you can see
Yeah.
how anything's built.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just look around your room, everything you're interacting with was created by people. That Shure SM7B microphone, like someone designed that, someone built it, and they didn't know how to do it before, but they got together, they figured it out. And there's
Yeah.
no college courses for a lot of these things. So the best way to do it is just kind of like go online, start Googling, look at the Wikipedia page,
I love that.
look up the books, look up the how-tos, watch YouTube. Like there's so
Yeah.
much good learning stuff out there that it's kind of a special time, because I do really believe more than ever, you can learn almost anything online. You're really only limited by your ambition and curiosity.
I 100% agree with that. I 100% agree with that. Yeah. Um, what, did people think you were crazy when you first were doing this? Like, or not at all?
It's a different paradigm, right? Like this economics of abundance versus scarcity. I remember my grandmother, who was a big influence in my life. My dad's parents both died when he was pretty young, and my grandfather on my mom's side died far before I was born. So I had this like matriarch of the family, grandmother, who was just really amazing. And she worked really hard. She's a real estate agent in Houston, 6 kids that she raised,
Wow.
mostly after her husband passed. And so just an incredible influence. And she would be like, Matthew, like, if you had a nickel for every blog or every website, and I was like, oh, it doesn't work like that. Like, um, but it doesn't mean that you don't make money. Like you can build business models on top of open source as well. So
Yeah.
one that we do is like you can get WordPress from anywhere. You could run it yourself on your home computer and get it from GoDaddy. But we have a version at WordPress.com that you can sign up for. And you could pay $50 all the way up to $500 a year if you want to sell like a really fancy e-commerce site. And those subscriptions are part of how we fund doing this full time.
Yeah.
And so that it was great, because the more subscribers we get, the more people that sign up for WordPress.com, the more that we're able to put back into developing the software, and then the software gets better.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's, yeah, God, it's just amazing that obviously you must have not had any idea that it would take off like this, right? Or maybe you did.
So that
maybe
was
you
a
did.
surprise. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's an insane market share to hold, right? It's just, in any market share. I think of food. I think if like someone was like selling 40% of the tacos in Austin, I would be pissed. I would be pissed at that person. Like, damn it, I'm selling tacos too. You can have 40%. This is nuts. But it's almost like if somebody was like, oh, free and open source tacos, you just come and do it yourself. And I understand why it's popular. Like, I get why people want to be a part of it too, right? I mean, you get to be a part of it. That's almost a reason why to jump behind it and support it. And I love that. I just think that's so, I just think it's so cool. But I'm just so, like, what
You're
does...
a chef, right?
I'm a chef, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a
it's
chef.
actually interesting. I don't know if you've noticed, you're from Texas as well?
Yeah, from Texas, yeah.
Cool. One thing I noticed, I mean, I'm not traveling anymore, but when I used to, I noticed that barbecue started to get better all around the world. Like it used to be, it'd be like terrible, dried out, like lean cuts of brisket. And like, oh, that's terrible. But then it started happening. I'd be in like Seoul, Korea, or Paris, France, and start to have some pretty good barbecue. And I was like, what happened? And it's actually, a guy in Austin, the Franklin's guy. What's his
Yeah,
name?
Aaron Franklin.
Aaron Franklin. He
Yeah.
published a book, right? He open sourced and shared his techniques for how he makes amazing
Open
brisket.
source.
And all of a sudden, people all over the world started to be like, oh, I can do that too.
Yeah.
And so now you can go, like, I would say the average level of brisket in the world has gotten better. And that's kind of cool.
Crazy. That is cool. And you're 100% right. It got people fired up about it. It got people excited, wanting to learn about it. Man, he open source. I love that. And I've never heard it put that way. I never heard it put that way. And that's a big deal actually among chefs, to not... So, I don't know. Chefs are different. Every chef's different. Some chefs are very eager to show you how they do things and how it works and how everything. And that's how I am. And I like working with chefs like that. But I also know other chefs who are like, yeah,
it's the secret sauce.
It's the secret sauce. You're not even going to find out the technique or the anything. Like, they're just not going to reveal what's going on. And I don't know. I do prefer. That
My
angers me
mom's
a
that
little
way.
bit. Is your mom that way? She's
She sent me like I think a cornbread recipe or something.
oh
And I have
shit.
a good friend who's a baker
Yeah.
in Houston. And I was like, hey, can you make this? Because I'm not a good chef or cook or anything. And so I was like, hey, do you want to make this recipe? And my mom was like, you did what? You shared the following recipe? Like that was for your kids and your future wife. Like that's not, you can't give that to anyone. It's like, it didn't even occur to me that this cornbread recipe could be a secret.
Yes. Or if someone ever hands you down a cast iron skillet or something, like
Oh,
you
yeah.
don't screw that around. Okay, you can't. You take that shit seriously. It's important. Yeah, that's crazy. It makes sense that a lot of this same stuff is like it's already a part of our lives. We just don't see it, right? And so
Mhm.
this way of doing it, it's been around or whatever. But I just think it's great that you made that choice because you didn't have to, right? I mean, you could have essentially made work, but like you said, it wouldn't have.
It wouldn't be the thing it was today.
Yeah,
So
you don't think it
I
would
feel
be the
like
thing.
if I
Yeah,
didn't make WordPress, someone else would have. It would be called
that's
something different, but like the
yeah,
world needed this system.
yeah,
And so there's this cool theory called adjacent possibilities. And you've probably heard how um, like different concepts in physics or math get discovered at the same time by different people. And there's always like who discovered this. But kind of what
yes,
happens is there's this what's called the realm of adjacent possibilities. So all the conditions are there, all the sort of steps that lead up to this thing being discovered. And so it's not unusual that two people working completely independently might come up with the same thing. It's because it's the adjacent possibilities. So the world kind of wants that to exist based on everything that's happened before. So I think the world needs an open source operating system, sort of base layer for the web.
yeah,
Just something that should exist. So we're trying to make it. Like I hope that the market share is not like a success. I see it as a big responsibility because you can lose it so easily. Like it wasn't that long ago.
sure,
Gosh, that remember Blackberries had
yeah,
like a 90% market share of smartphones.
yeah,
And when was the last time we saw a BlackBerry? They're essentially gone in
totally,
the space of a decade.
yeah.
So that you can lose it just as quickly. So you really have to stay on the bleeding edge. You have to really adapt, and it's actually kind of like a treadmill. You can't get off in
Well, that's
technology in
crazy.
particular. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, if you have everybody involved, that's almost a way to ensure it's you know long road, right? In a way.
But there's also open source projects where there were hundreds of people working on them that also go away. There's like a very fine balance. You need to so I'm the lead of the project, but it's not like it's almost like being a mayor or something, where maybe you were elected or unelected in my case, but you can't really tell people what to do. You
Yeah,
can try to like tweak some things here and there to create the environments for your city to thrive, but people are free people. You can't like say like do not throw the trash.
yeah,
You can try to create a culture where like maybe people don't leave trash on the ground or have like trash cans on every corner, so it's just easier to throw it away. But you can't force people to do anything. Um, so it's very similar to open source. Like I try to, conduct the band. I try to get up
yeah.
front, set a tempo, say this is going to be fun. But people disagree with me all the time. There's big
I'm
fights
sure.
inside the WordPress community, and
I'm sure. Oh, I'm
it's
sure.
not always
I
clear
read
that
all about them. I read all kinds of stuff. It's like, woo. Yeah.
it gets spicy.
Oh yeah. I can't imagine for you, man. I just can't imagine. It's like you can't win. You make this free. It's open source. You get everybody involved, and you can't win. It's like there's just going to be people mad at you no matter what. Honestly, no matter what.
I think if you're doing something significant, it's going to create pushback.
Yes,
And you,
hundred
you nailed
percent.
it earlier. It's way better. I think you want to be either loved or hated. The worst is just apathy. If no one cares whether what you're doing exists or not, um, that's kind of like the valley of death. You want to be on one side, and hopefully more people liking it than, than hating it. But you're always
Yeah.
going to have a few.
Yes.
No change has ever happened in the world without people pushing back on it.
These people that push back on WordPress or complain about, they're using it, right? At the same time, they're still using the product. I mean,
That's great.
exactly. It's like,
And also,
look,
it makes you better. Sometimes it's
yeah,
that
maybe you're right.
critique or that person criticizing you
Sure.
in a way you hadn't thought of that like can help you realize there's something that you were missing or something you need to get better. So that's why even, I think a really valuable skill when you're building software, particularly online and public, is we say there's a nugget of gold in every virtual, every hate, every complaint, everything. So what we try to do is, no matter how, maybe it's like really attacking you and saying I'm a terrible person, but like kind of keep digging and see where that nugget is. Like see what
Wow.
it was that's at the core of that, or
Yeah.
what maybe made someone feel that way. If you can have empathy for that and try to understand it, it can actually be really, really valuable for helping you discern what the next best steps are for the software.
Well, that's very big of you to think like that, to be honest with you. I'm sure for me, that would be tough as hell if somebody's coming at me, coming in hot. You know what I mean? If you coming in hot, it's hard for me to respond. But then again, I'm a passionate, Latin chef. Like you know what I mean? I can get riled up like that, bro. I would
Have
not
you
be
ever had
good.
someone send back a dish or something?
Yeah, oh yeah, of course, absolutely. Yes, it happens a lot. Now, granted, I will say, and with customers, I'm as slick as James Bond. It's like, there's always two faces to a chef. There's the chef in the kitchen and the chef out front. So yeah, of course. So look, I don't even argue with people if they say the dish.
Yeah.
I don't even get into this, that, or the other. Okay, great. New dish. Who
Yeah.
cares, right? Just get them the new dish and let's move on. There's no point in arguing whatever.
Do
Now,
you
when I'm
taste
back
it
in the
to see
kitchen,
if it
yes.
like,
Yes.
yeah, if
Now,
they're saying
God,
it's too spicy or
I
too,
hate to
because it could
admit
be someone
that.
else in the kitchen.
Yeah, that's true. I hate to admit that, actually. But yeah, that's exactly what I'll do. We'll take a dish back and get some spoon. I'll be tasting that dish to find out what's going on. Trust me. I want to know if you don't like your dish. Like, tell me. Don't hide it. Don't.
See, there you go. You want that feedback.
You want feedback. The worst chefs are the ones that like, don't tell me anything. Just shut your mouth. It's like, no, you want people to tell you, because otherwise you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Plus, why did you open up this place? For yourself? No, you opened it so other people would come and sit. So literally the value is sitting in those seats, right? Like, you got to take care of those people. That's why you're open. That's why you're doing this. So yeah, I'm very much just let's get it fixed. Let's get it. And whether I agree with you or not doesn't matter, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
and honestly, 9 times out of 10, they're right. The person's right. Usually you get it to the back, you taste it, you go, damn, that is burnt, or that is too salty, or that
No,
is
something
too
happens.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. It happens, and you gotta admit it. You gotta put your pride aside and admit that there's a problem and fix it, and that is a huge problem in cooking, to be honest with you. Do you think that's a problem with what you do as well? People just get so bullheaded. They're just like, nope, no problem here.
Well, it's interesting because software is a dynamic system, meaning that um, if someone doesn't figure it out or says something's wrong, maybe there's something you could have done earlier that would have kept them from getting to that point. Labeled a button differently or had an interface works differently. And then, the inputs from that go into the outputs of the next thing. So that's what I mean by a dynamic system.
Yeah.
Where a dish is kind of like, I remember a sommelier told me once, when someone says a bottle is corked, if sometimes the person just doesn't
They don't know what that means. They don't know.
like.
Yeah.
And so what they told me, the secret is, if they offer to bring back another bottle of the same vintage, same producer, the bottle was probably corked, which happens, right?
Yes.
A few percent are going to happen.
It actually happens quite a bit more than you think. Yeah.
And some people don't know, which is also, but if they offer to bring you a different bottle, it might be that you just might not understand the taste of that and it doesn't appeal to you. And so they're trying to bring you something that might be more palatable or more in your, maybe more accessible as like a wine. But the wine's finished, right? Like you can't go in and like mix some other varietals into it or like remix it and bring it back out. Like it's kind of done. So I think that's probably a good metaphor. And I always think about that, especially if I ever send back a bottle of wine. I'm like, do they offer me the same one? Or is it like, are they like, oh, sorry, that was one of our last ones. Can I get you something different? Like, oh, that might have been me. Maybe I'm just dumb.
Funny. That is
You know what I always look for though is I always ask them to taste it, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, just do you mind trying this? I'm not sure. And you can usually tell by their face.
I mean, to be frank, you don't need to taste a corked wine. You can smell it. It's immediate.
Yeah.
It's in the nose.
Sometimes with older wines, like they do sometimes get a little funky, and that's like how they're supposed to taste. But
Sure, sure. I'm actually a psalm as well.
barnyard. Oh, you are cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I did the first level Psalm, 12,
Awesome.
I think 11 years ago. Before I moved to Spain, I was like, oh, became a Psalm. I was like, oh, I got to go to Europe now and live in the vineyards. And I did. It was great.
Wow.
But you learn a lot more about wine. To be honest with you, you learn what wine really is and what it's not. It's almost probably like coding. Probably some people have this
Yeah.
idea of coding. It's this, and this. Same with wine. Wine is this big pretentious thing. We gotta, spend a lot of money. It's like no, no, no. Okay, go talk to real people who make wine and drink wine, and wine is it's just such a wide world of
Yeah.
things, right? But yeah, I love that about the vintages and the cork. That is so true. That they'll, shit, I used to do it. That's exactly you don't know what the customer knows. Okay, it's that
Mm.
simple. I don't know your knowledge. You're going to try to tell me at some point. Probably going to try to. There's just things that people do. They drop certain names, or they say certain
Yeah.
things, or you see them on the menu. Oh yeah, Meritage, or Chateau Neuf du Pape. You're like, oh okay, you know how to say that. That means you know
I'm
something.
so bad at pronouncing everything. They probably think I'm some sort of country bumpkin.
Not at all, man. It's and no one should be pretentious about the names either. It's like,
Yeah.
bitch, you didn't know how to say it till someone showed you either. Right? Like you're not French. You didn't grow up in Bordeaux. You don't know how to say these names, I promise you. So yeah, I mean that stuff doesn't even bother me, Again, I let go of the pretension of wine by going to the old world wines and working with real winemakers
They're
and
farms, right? They're growing stuff. It's
they're
agriculture.
farms. They're growing stuff. These are people that we're drinking wine out of barrels, out of bowls. I got a bowl. I'm just drinking wine. It was like it just showed me that not to take it as seriously as I used to and be so pretentious about it. I mean, I used to be a little pretentious about it, a little. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And it's this and this and blah blah blah. And it just like okay that working with actual professionals and master sommeliers, I trained under a master sommelier. You learn that, and mind you, there's only like 100 or less in the world.
That's
So,
incredible.
you just learn that it's more than what you think it is, and less than what you think it is, if that makes sense. You just learn to appreciate what's the trueness of the wine and not the price or right like this the stupid things people think makes a good wine ordering by right like that's not what makes a good wine by price
Mhm.
or this or even the name, right? That doesn't even necessarily mean it's going to be a good wine. But we could talk about that all day. I'm sorry. I want
No,
to get into
I
more.
love talking about wine. It's interesting, like um, the times when I've learned the most about wine is when I had someone kind of teaching me. Like I had this friend, he's passed away, but his name was Dean Allen, and we were at a restaurant, and we got a corked bottle, and he was like, "Let me show you." He's like, Do you mind if we like pour a little bit of this for everyone, and then let's get another bottle, and it came uncorked, and you kind of like smelled each one. I was like, "Oh, I see. There's like this
Yeah.
wet cardboard thing,"
Yeah.
and it was. I'd probably had a dozen bottles of corked wine before and just thought it was something that I didn't know or didn't like
Oh
it. And it's
no.
and it
Yeah.
wasn't until you had that kind of side by side that
The
you really
side by
learn.
side is crucial. That's
Yeah.
absolutely crucial.
There was a guy I met in San Francisco, Bob Perkowitz actually, and he was just a guy I met. Actually, I through like some random thing in San Francisco, and he just kind of took me under his wing, and he was like, "Hey," he had been collecting wines since the '70s. Like, "Here, let's try some wines, the exact same vineyard, like 5 to 8 years apart. Here's like an 80, here's an 88, here's like a 96 or something. And then let's
Wow.
try the same
Jesus.
year with different vineyards. So we did like some vertical and some horizontal. And then he drew a little map on a napkin, like here's where this region was. And it's kind of
Wow.
wild. I was like, actually, it's what it makes me think of for software as well, is how important education is for creating the market. Jazz,
Yeah.
like I play jazz.
Yeah.
Jazz
Oh,
fans are created by people learning how to play jazz. Like most people, including myself, don't become professional jazz musicians. But for the rest of my life, I'll appreciate jazz and listen to jazz and go to jazz concerts. So they created the market. When you learn about wine and when you educate people on wine, it's creating the consumers, and hopefully the more sophisticated consumers that'll appreciate those who do put more care into it or things like that. And that's what keeps
Yes.
the market going. So for most of these sort of higher end markets, education is key to creating the next generation of people who will be consumers and support the patrons of it.
Yeah, that's honestly a big reason why wine has grown so much in the United States in the last, right, 10, 15
Mm.
years, where it wasn't popular at all to drink wine, maybe in California, right, or something. But now wine is grown in Texas, for instance. It's really good wine.
Really? Huh.
You'd be surprised. Yes,
I thought they imported a lot of the grapes.
they do import some juice, but we also grow a lot of grapes here too. Tempranillo, for
Huh.
instance, is probably the best grape to grow.
Is that an Italian
In
one?
Tempranillo is a Spanish grape.
Oh, cool.
It's grown a lot, like all over Spain. To be honest with you, it's definitely the most used grape in Spanish wine by far is Tempranillo grape. So just especially in southern
Cool.
Spain, which is very similar to Texas, terrain and whatnot. So that's one of the most popular grapes. But yeah, I've seen wine distilleries,
I've seen a
breweries.
lot of distilleries. Like,
They're blowing up here in Texas.
yeah,
Yeah, all over, right? It's become popular because more people know about it. Like you said, they got educated, and now you get a little educated about something, you're like, oh, let's go out and learn some more,
you
which
can
is great.
appreciate it better.
Yes,
You know,
and you make a good point because I think that's what keeps it going and grows it more. I think that's a great point. The
which
education of it.
part of Spain did you live in?
I lived in Granada in the south, and I
Oh,
lived in
cool.
Galicia, which is up
Yeah,
northwest above Portugal.
the
Uh,
bagpipes and the everything
yeah, I
cool
lived
stuff out
in
of there.
Barcelona for very, very briefly,
Uh-huh.
and I lived in a town called Cáceres, which is in
Oh,
Extremadura, which is just outside of Madrid, near the Portuguese border. That's where my wife's family is from.
oh, amazing.
And yeah, I kind of lived. I lived in a lot of different places. I worked a lot of different places too, traveling around, working in different restaurants and bars, and
And
stuff
what an
like that.
amazing place. Like one of the places that blew me away was gosh, what's the city with the Guggenheim Museum?
I
It's
couldn't
really
tell you.
inexpensive,
I
and
I never even
its
been there.
name is escaping me. Gosh, but it was just one of these places where you could what's it called? Pin, the things on the
Pinchos, pinchos. Is that what you
pinchos. I
mean?
didn't want to say the
Pinchos?
wrong word because
No, no, yeah,
sometimes um,
yeah,
and they're so good. And like you just walk in and like this small little bar, or I remember having a dish that was like eggs and rice and ham and like potatoes and
yeah.
what would that have been? But it was like one of my
Um,
favorite dishes I've ever had, and it's so simple.
that sounds like a tortilla. But it
Maybe.
could also. Did you say rice?
I don't think it was rice. I think it was mostly potatoes, like a cool spicy aioli, like jamon, and yeah, it was just really great. It's,
Oh, you might have had patatas bravas, patatas
yeah.
alioli. There's a lot of different. I mean,
Bilbao.
obviously, what was it? Oh, Bilbao.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to Bilbao.
One of
Beautiful.
my favorite cities in Spain, but that's a place I definitely, when all this crazy pandemic stuff is over, want to spend some time. I'm looking forward to going back to Europe someday.
Yeah, my wife's there right now. Actually, she had to go take. She left a few weeks ago. Had to go take care of her family.
Mm.
So she's gonna be in Spain till January. Man, I don't get to see my wife till January. It's a nightmare for me.
Can you head over there if you go through like UK or something, or are you blocked as?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. I don't think so.
Yeah.
She had a lot of trouble just getting there. She had to get special permission from the embassy and this letter
Mm.
and blah 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 because she was going to take care of her family.
Mm.
Yeah, Americans, and she's dual citizen. I'm not a dual citizen, so
Mm-hmm.
they probably would not. They probably kick my ass out in 2 seconds. I
Mm.
guarantee you. Yeah,
Although I have some friends that have been posting from there in places that look like not even locked down. Like it seems like things are getting back to
sure.
normal pretty quickly,
They're
which
trying.
I hope we can have here too someday,
Yeah, man, it's been nuts, right? This whole
especially in Texas.
Global, yeah, that's very true. You know, I'm lucky I'm in Travis County in Austin where the numbers really aren't too crazy.
Mm.
And to be fair, like I'm holed up in my house, and I have been really since March. Like I barely leave to go. I go to the grocery store, maybe to the
Hmm.
to whatever the lake, not the lake, the river. Sometimes to walk my
Hmm.
dogs when nobody's around. Right, I make sure that,
Hmm.
but it's been nuts.
You don't want to play around with it. I have some friends who are pretty
Right?
young, very healthy, athletic that got hit really, really hard, and
Really?
still even months later are having issues. So I do think if you can avoid it, it's the thing to do.
Yeah, that's my thing. I don't have to, so why would I put myself in that position? What have you been doing this whole time? Just is that sort of your position? Are you in? Well, first of all, where are you at in the world?
I'm based in Houston,
Yeah, oh,
Texas.
you are in Houston.
Yeah. The our company's distributed as well, so we didn't really have an office before. We just worked together online. So most of my work is just kind of looking at a computer like this.
Yeah,
I'm on video calls, probably a few hours a week, and then lots of essentially managing the people and the product for all the things we do. Um, so that part of my work didn't really change too much. Uh, Ordering in instead of going out to restaurants, and I used to travel quite a bit because the WordPress community is really all over the world, and my colleagues are all over the world.
yeah.
So I traveled last year with a peak. I flew over 500,000 miles, which was a lot. So
Holy
all
cow!
over. And
Jesus.
but because I could work anywhere, I just work
Yeah,
wherever I was.
yeah,
Even on planes, they have Wi-Fi now. So just stopping was really nice. But being very careful. My mom's older. Want to make sure she stays safe.
yeah,
Um, there's a few friends I see, have kind of in a pod, but um, they obviously have parents or loved ones, so I want them to be careful. But I do really think about it. I have a few friends internationally that have been affected. My best friend in Houston's a firefighter, so he's on the front lines
oh
of
man, yeah,
things. He's been saved so far, so praying for him, making sure he's
for sure.
okay.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's great. So then, didn't seem like too much of a. I worked from home too as well before this, so it was kind of like
cool.
not as big a change. But I didn't travel 500,000 miles a year on
I don't know if I
planes.
recommend it. That was definitely
Yeah,
too much.
that sounds crazy, man. I'm not gonna lie, that sounds absolutely crazy. I hate flying, to be honest with you, and I've flown a
Um,
lot. Every time it bothers me. I taking off and landing,
now
it
planes are my
bothers.
happy place.
Oh no,
That kind of like
no.
when it first start to lift off and the
Oh, I
wheels
hate
lift,
that.
that
Oh,
moment.
I hate that feeling.
Um,
I hate it so much.
and I got really productive on planes. It's actually something I had to adjust to, which is because on a plane, you're like, you got your little pod, right?
Yeah.
Like people bring you food and water. You got a little desk. You can you're all comfortable. You can recline. So it's kind of like I don't know, maybe it was like Wally or something. I'm just
Yeah.
like in my hyper productive mode. And then when I came home and started working from home a lot more versus being on the road, I just kind of, because my day was less structured, I didn't have to be as focused. And so at the very beginning of the pandemic, I found like I was far more distracted. I think also because we were facing this worldwide pandemic that, I was getting drawn into the news and worrying about
Yeah.
friends and things like that, colleagues. So that was probably part of it as well. But it was interesting. I've tried to build in a lot more structure to my day that I used to get for free because I was moving around. Now I, try to have a routine, try to go for walks, try to
Yeah.
exercise certain times, meditate, just to find like those um those routines that kind of
Just
help
get
you
your
bring up the
neighbor
day.
to like strip search you. Just to, you know what I mean? Just to put you right back in the airport mindset. Just like, okay, let's do this.
Luckily that's never happened to me. Been patted down, but never searched too bad.
Yeah, me neither. I've been patted down, but yeah, thank God that never happens. Sir, can we see you over here? You're just like, oh God, I hope I never hear that.
I've had it where they go through your luggage, which is always embarrassing, especially if you're returning and it's all like dirty clothes. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, sorry. But yeah. The
Oh,
most
that
trouble
is
I've ever
funny.
had traveling was to Canada. I had a real hard time with the immigration. where
Really?
they're kind of like, it was when early days of WordPress Automatic. They were like, "What do you do? How do you make money? Is this a real job?" I guess they were worried I was going to stay in Canada.
Is
When
this a real job?
yeah. And once when
Oh,
leaving Israel, actually, so not going in, it was
yeah.
fine, but on leaving, they really like went through my passport and something, and I think I answered a question wrong where they had asked me how many times I'd been in Indonesia, and I thought once, but it had been twice or something, and so they pulled me aside and they went through every
Oh
single
man.
thing, and they like took my nail clipper, they like all
Oh
this
my
sort of
god.
stuff. iPads had just coming out, and they X-rayed the iPad, and they weren't comfortable with it, so they like wrapped it up in its own box and wouldn't let me touch it, and it had to ride in the cargo hold
Oh
instead
my
of with
god.
me on the flight. So that was just kind of funny. But I get it. You want to be safe,
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
which
we
is bizarre.
want to be safe. It's bizarre. It's a little uncomfortable. I obviously you remember flying before 9/11, right? That's when everything changed.
Vaguely, yeah, I was pretty young then, but it was like it
Yeah.
was. I remember, they could come up to the gate, wave at you. That was nice.
Yeah, you used to be able to go pick people up when they come out of the gate. You'd be
Mhm.
right there, or like you said, you drop people off. Yeah, it's just so you could wait with people. Right? I mean, just food. I mean, it was just so. I mean, just so relaxed and very cavalier back in those days. So I honestly don't mind all the procedures. Yeah, I can definitely be frustrating sometimes, but you know,
Hmm.
we need it, right? We need that protection. Well,
Maybe.
Matt, yeah, maybe. Well, look, man, I don't want to keep you too much time, but I do want to quickly mention a few things before that we go. I know you have a podcast too, so I want to quickly talk about that. I want people to know about your podcast. I'll listen to a couple episodes, and I just, man, Matt, that's just so much I could talk to you about, man. That's a problem. Just not enough time. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your great podcast.
Sure. So, like I said, my company is totally remote, totally distributed, and we have been for 15 years now. We're about 1,300 people. So, as we grew, we were able to figure out different things that worked or didn't. And we're not the only company, pre-pandemic, we weren't the only company doing this. So I wanted to interview other companies who were really good at this, and we're anywhere from 100 people to thousands of people, and get their best practices. So think of it kind of like a management podcast if you're running a company, starting a business, or managing other people. Hopefully, there's some things you can learn from it. It's that distributed.blog. Or you can just search for distributed on like Spotify, Apple, whatever, wherever you get your podcast.
Okay.
And it's been a lot of fun. A good recent episode that I had a lot of fun was with Adam Ghazali. I forget what number the episode was, but he's the head of neuroscience at University of San Francisco,
Wow.
UCSF. So all how the brain works, the chemicals,
Yeah.
everything. And we talked about distraction. So it's could be pretty interesting if you find yourself battling distractions, having trouble focusing, anything like that. He's got some really good tips from kind of a science-based point of view for how to focus better.
That's awesome. That is so cool. That's just a side note. That's my problem, distraction.
All of us, me too.
But right, yeah, it's that's a tough one. But yeah, what I loved is reading that you have this company. Everybody, oh, excuse me, everybody's all over the world. Everyone's spread out, right? There's no physical office where you guys like meet and sip at the water cooler, right? Like that's basically our company too. We're all
Cool.
we were just talking about that in a Zoom meeting yesterday with our PR person. Like, you're in France, you're in Serbia, you're in Romania, you're in London, I'm in Austin, right? It was just so cool. It was like, this
That's
is our
awesome.
life though. This is what we do, right? This is everybody somewhere else, and we work so well together remotely. I've never worked like this, to
Mm.
be honest with you. I've always worked, right? I'm used to restaurants and kitchens where I'm with the
Wow.
people I work with, right next to them. So I'm not used to this remote thing, but it's fascinating, and it works actually so well in some ways. And I'm amazed at the
It's
amount
also
of
like
work we
learning
get
to
done.
drive, right? There's a learning curve. So that when you
That
first start
too.
it, it's probably not fun. But once you get the groove of it, it can be like a pretty, I think, a really amazing way to connect people. You found people, it sounds like 5 or 6 different countries that are passionate about whatever you're passionate about. And you can work together and create something that the world's never seen before. That's powerful.
Man, that's the best way to put it. I didn't put it so eloquently, but yeah, that's it, man. And there's even more than that, right? I'm just a part of the company. Sebastian, who Sauerborn, who runs everything, he owns multiple companies. That's how he runs all of them. Everybody's
Cool.
just boom, 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 and I love that. I wasn't sure about that at the beginning. I thought because I'm just not used to that. But that's the new
It
way,
is
right?
new.
This is
Yeah,
the
you get
future.
used to it.
This is the
I
future.
th- I feel like it's going to bifurcate a little bit. So jobs that can be done online will be.
Yeah,
There's no reason to pay a ton for an office and make everyone commute and everything like that if you don't need to. And I do think there's also going to be like human connection, being physically together is so powerful. You
it's
know,
very
that I
powerful.
takeout delivery is not the same as like an amazing restaurant experience. When someone can curate
That's
the
right.
environment, the music, the aromas of the kitchen, the sounds, all the lighting, all that sort of stuff. It can be so special. And there's equivalents of that for dance, for music, for everything.
Yeah.
Um, that there is something really magical about getting people together. But maybe that'll go more to the experiential route. Like instead of just all going to the same place and staring at our computers for 8 hours, like let's all go to the same place and do something that we could only do if we're together in person, like dance or listen to a Grateful Dead or something.
That's a great point. That's it. I mean, and the pandemic has pushed a lot of these, new ways, either to the, forward or yeah, right. I mean, it's sort of just made it come quicker. I think in a lot of ways, at least in Austin, I know that a lot of the commercial real estate is they're talking about like it's screwed. There's so many
Mm,
people that aren't going to want to release these offices or come back in and do this stuff because they found success in being remote.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I think that's going to hurt in the short term, right?
yeah,
Because I do believe that a lot of these offices just doesn't make sense for them to spend that much on real estate. But then what opportunities does that open up?
yeah,
Like, think how much commercial real estate there is in most downtowns or cities like San Francisco. Could that be repurposed to be housing? And maybe
exactly.
that's a way to like really address some of the housing crises that make these cities unaffordable, including Austin itself. Like, you know,
Totally, it's getting
my
more
sister lives in
expensive.
Austin. And like,
Oh,
it could
she
be
does.
just
Yeah,
as expensive as New York or San Francisco in certain spots.
yeah,
So, what can we do to like just make it easier for people to live together? Or could that revitalize parts of town that maybe were dead at night because there's just a bunch of office people? And now people can actually live and work there, and that becomes like the new hip area.
yeah,
It gets kind of gentrified. We use in a prerogative sense usually, but it can also be an exciting revitalization of a neighborhood that was maybe a little hollowed out before.
that's a great point. Damn, that's a smart point. I really like that. Yeah, that's a great point. Well, we'll
But we'll
see
see
what
what
happens.
happens.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm with
people
you.
just want to be with their colleagues again,
Yeah.
and they'll just bounce back.
I mean, there is
I don't
something
try
to
to make
say
predictions
about that,
anymore.
right? There is something to say about that. I was talking to my brother who works, he's been working at home, I don't know, I guess 10 years now from home. And he told me, over the past couple of years, but even before the pandemic, like, look, man, I've been getting really antsy and really like, he's like, I miss just going to an office and having a meeting or just, sitting down and talking with somebody like a face to face. He's like, I miss that. I actually miss it, and it made him want to start looking for a new job
Huh.
because of that. But you still, you get all the advantages of working from home. You don't have to
Yeah.
commute, right? You get to save all that money. Blah 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 blah. And it just, you know, still wasn't fulfilling to some
Yeah.
extent.
What
It's
we do in
crazy.
normal times is, we have people from all over the world, is we would basically travel 3 or 4 weeks out of the year. So if you were on a team, you would go and spend a week with that team someplace interesting, maybe
Yeah,
in Granada, maybe, it doesn't really matter to us where you go. Um, and so you'd get to really be with your team and build that trust, break bread, share a beverage, like, do those things that are great for building that trust between teams. And then once a year, we bring the whole company together. That's obviously off the table for now, and I do miss it. So I think
yeah.
there is some aspect of that if you can build that in, it's really, really powerful. Also, when we get back to normal, one thing we'd always encourage people to do is like, don't just eat lunch by yourself every day. Like,
Yeah,
call your friends. Like
yeah,
maybe they work in offices, but they can leave for lunch. Like go like instead of just having a social network by default with your colleagues, who do you actually want to spend time with?
yeah.
Is it your loved ones? Is it your family? Is it your like friends? Is you maybe could drive 2 hours to see them, or like, see a matinee because you can shift your work. So go to the restaurants or the grocery store or the movie theater when it's not crowded. Um, that's, obviously normal time stuff, but if you can build that in, it's actually really nice to time shift, to go to the gym when not everyone else is at the gym.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Man, Matt, you seem like such a person that's focused on productivity, right? Just getting to the getting to the right thing,
Listening to too
no
much
matter
Jim Ferriss,
what.
probably.
No, man, I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking about your answers, and I'm thinking like, what made you come to those conclusions? And I can just tell from your heart that at the end of the day, you just want, you know, productivity, right? You just want something to happen. However that happens, whatever the easiest way for that to happen, whatever the way that that person, is going to be the most productive, let's do it that way. And it doesn't matter to you so much the journey as the destination. I don't know. I could be wrong. But
It's
that's
different
kind
for
of what I
different
get from
people.
you. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not one
But
size fits all.
for sure. For sure. I mean, that's 100% sure. I would say that as a compliment, man. I think that's a great
Nice.
quality to have as a person. I don't think a lot of people have that. In fact, I don't think many people at all have that sort of quality of that. They just think that, hey, this is it. It's A, B, and C. That's it. It goes in this box. This is what we do. There's no change in it. And you just seem very open to adapting and change and listening. And that's just such a rare characteristic. You might see it as, well, that seems normal to me that this is what you do. It's like, that's not really how a lot of the world works, to be honest with you. So
It's
I would
interesting you put
say,
that. I think the media often tries to make successful people look like they have really firm, like immovable views on things. But of all the most successful people I've ever met in technology, music, etc., like they're all pretty humble and open-minded, because you start to see that there's more than one way to do it. There's
yeah,
more than one path. And the more you learn, the more you don't know.
that's absolutely true. I say that all the time. The older I get, the more I realize I don't know shit. Yeah, that's
There's
what I
just so much
realize.
more to learn. And you
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
versus when you're young and know everything.
Yeah, when you're young, you're like, I got this. Is
I
this
figured it out. I finished school.
Yeah, I figured it out. This is what everyone's complaining about. This is nothing, right? Like, this is not, what are people bitching about? But then, yeah, you're right. As you get older, you're like, whoa, okay. Just so I remember the first time somebody, I don't remember, but somebody telling me like how big the universe is, and you just think, okay, what am I? Right? What is the point of
Yeah,
this? Why are we even going to work? Why am I going to finish this chicken parmesan? What is the point of this?
that's
This has
funny.
no meaning anymore. It's crazy. It's crazy to think about this.
Or it gets more meaning,
Or it gets
right?
more meaning. You're
Because
right.
we're part of something so much bigger.
That's a
I
good
think you can
point.
look at it either way.
Yeah.
Um, you can kind of look at the stars, stare into the stars, and feel like so infinitesimal that it's like, why do I go on? Or there's a sort of just a tweak to it actually, which is like, wow, I'm part of such a much bigger thing, a much bigger whole,
Yeah.
and like how petty are our differences on this one little rock around this one little star. Like let's work that out. We're on the same spaceship, planet Earth. Like it can make things that were bothering you seem smaller. So hopefully it makes the bad things seem small, not the good things.
No, that's exactly it, man. That's absolutely it. It makes you perspective, right? It just puts things into perspective, and you go, "What am I bitching about? What am I so angry about?" You know, yeah, that definitely helps. Makes you appreciate, what you have. That honestly probably just for me just comes from not. I didn't grow up with money, right? My family wasn't wealthy or anything, so I learned very young to appreciate the things I have and work for the things you want.
Mm.
Not it's not don't there's nobody going to be coming around the corner, ready to hand it to you. If you want
Yeah,
something, go get it. I mean, it's that simple.
yeah.
There's no secret to the success.
I love that kind of. It's a very Texan point of view too.
Yeah.
There's like this, like help your neighbor and be self-sufficient. And
That's
that's
it.
a really good mix. Like people are always, I bring a lot of friends to Texas, and they're always surprised at how friendly people are. I don't know what their perception is, but I'm like, yeah, Texas is a place that if your car is broken down on the side of the road, a couple of people are going to stop to help you. I remember I was on this place where I think we're 45 me 610, which is like a really busy part of Houston freeway system. I was in the left lane and my car just died. You know, I was in
Oh no.
college. I had all these old cars, and so like I sputtered to a stop, and I'm in the left lane of a freeway. There's no shoulder. It's just like a busy
Oh,
freeway, and some guy in a pickup truck comes out, stops his truck next to me, and then essentially like stops traffic. I had a tire that had blown, stops the entire freeway traffic, gets out with his hand out, and like so I can limp over to the right side of the road. That the car can limp over. You know,
yeah.
I was fine, but like I can kind of like roll on the rim of the tire to the shoulder, and then the guy just walks back, waves, smiles, and goes on his merry way. And never seen him before, never seen him again. But like to me, that's like the Texas spirit.
That's it. That's like the most Texas story I ever heard. I love it. That's like it really. That's Texas. A guy in a pickup truck
Yeah,
stopped to help you. Yeah. How many times is that? That's like that
all
is
the
so
time.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah, all the time. They're constantly there. Like they like it too. They like helping. They like. That's why
yeah.
another thing I love about
It
Texas.
feels
They
good.
feels good.
Feels good to help people.
Yep. Feels good to just do something for your neighbor. So yeah.
Whenever I'm really down or depressed, or like the thing that snaps me out of the most, music and helping other people.
Boom.
If you can kind of contribute, help a friend, help a cause, donate to a charity, like it kind of, I think, because it builds that connection. Like, I think
Yeah.
a lot of, for me, like depression is like feeling disconnected or
Sure.
separation from the world. And so when you can feel more connected, it actually is quite kind of gets you back on track.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful. That's absolutely true, man. I agree with that as well. Yeah, this has been, I gotta tell you, Matt, this has been such an amazing conversation, man. I really, I gotta say
Really
that,
enjoyed it. Thanks
yeah,
for
I really
good
have.
luck with this podcast. I hope it turns into like the most awesome thing. It's already
We're
really cool.
trying, we're trying,
And
man.
that you got the
Best,
Texas flag.
it's a little over, a little over the top, I think. I'm not a
No,
very like
it's kind of
patriotic
small actually. If you
person,
can make it bigger,
Okay, yeah, yeah. It's just like this massive thing.
like Oklahoma size. Yeah,
Yeah.
Texas size, Texas flag.
No, man, I appreciate it. Look, we're trying to become the best podcast in Texas. We just launched this
Cool.
year, so we're trying, man. We're going little by little.
And then Joe
So
Rogan's moving there. You're
he's coming here to Austin. It's so
you
crazy.
got
I
some
think
outlets.
I
Well,
think it's gonna help.
Tim and Joe are both in Austin. So yeah, you're in the right space. You must be in the podcast capital of the world.
Yeah, but you know who else is here? Alex Jones. So that doesn't make me feel better, right? That's like
Uh,
the craziest of crazies is here in Austin. It's nuts. I see
it's
them on South Congress, like driving down
really
in these. Yeah, I live off South Congress. I live, in a good part of Austin. Great. Okay. Blah 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 blah. But the problem is, yeah, the Infowars guys, they have some weird black vehicle. Have you ever seen Tango and Cash, that movie? It's like some weird artillery vehicle. It's all black. They
No, at
drive
least
it
that's
down
consistent.
South Congress. It is funny, and they got these bullhorns. They just constantly screaming about. I don't even know, honestly. I can't even understand what it happens once a week, probably.
That's
I'm
pretty
usually
funny.
I'm honking my horn behind them usually, like I'm just trying to get an HEB, guys. Fuck, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Why are you?
get out of the way. It's so
I
crazy.
guess that I remember seeing it with the person with the bullhorn and the Bible,
Yeah,
on
that's
the
it.
corners of things. Like
Totally.
people proselytize, and I like living in a country where people can do that.
100%. I'm all about the
It's,
freedom of speech too. 100%. Let them do it. Let them say it. Yeah, don't bother me. Just sometimes when I'm trying to get to HEB, I'm just like, just let me
You're like,
get
come on,
around. Yeah.
bacon, like.
So anyway, but yeah, but again, man,
Thanks for
Matt,
having me on, man.
no, man, I really, really do appreciate it. And real quick before we go, just let everybody know how they can connect with you online or WordPress, whatever you want to tell people.
Sure. My blog is, if you type in ma.tt, that'll take you to my blog, no .com or anything. And I'm on Tumblr, Instagram, and Twitter at Photomat, which is spelled PHOTO. Like take a photo, MATT.
Boom. Awesome.
So check it out. I'd love to connect with folks after the show.
Yes. Well, again, thank you so much, Matt. We really, really appreciate it. I hope you have some good plans for the rest of the week, rest of the day. Get to do something fun. Get out of the house, maybe get some sun. Thanks again, Matt. All right, brother.
Bye-bye.
The Lone Star Plate podcast is produced by Texas Real Food. Go to texasrealfood.com and you can search your city for stores, butchers, restaurants, farmers markets, and more who are using fresh, artisanal, organic sources. It's a fun site that brings all natural options all together. I hope you enjoyed this episode. For more information, go to thelonestarplate.com. I'm your host, Patrick Scott Armstrong. Until next time.